All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the wasmCloud community call on Wednesday, February 14th. Today is a very special day because it is Valentine's Day, and we're going to talk about what we love. And especially, we're going to talk about how much we love WebAssembly, wasmCloud, and our lovely community. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thanks for throwing your little special apple hearts out there. Hey,
How you
Caroline,
do
thank
that?
you. It's like a it's like
It's
something on
it's a
the
Mac.
new
There's this
Mac.
cool
Yeah.
computer called a Mac, and it's like, everyone says it's the best. Sips Kool-Aid. Um,
We're
I'm in a Hackintosh. Don't tell Apple.
Bear, bear, stare. You just have to believe.
gonna continue our streak of celebrating random holidays and events at the beginning of the community call. I love it. Um, well, we can come back to that. I'm not opening that, Taylor. Good try. Uh, On the agenda today, we've got a quick little demo. I want to show off a feature that's going to be coming in wasmCloud 1.0 around observability, which is just full support for tracing logs and metrics in wasmCloud for an OTel exporter. We're going to talk a little bit about this upcoming minor release of wasmCloud in 0.82, which we cut a release candidate for yesterday and should be finalizing that and getting it out along with wash lib, all the things today. And then we'll do our regularly scheduled roadmap update, just check in on the 1.0 milestone and see how things are going. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, we want to talk about OTel tracing logs and metrics. And we've actually had support for traces in wasmCloud for a long time, the distributed traces. And kind of a core tenet of what we have done with our approach is that the observability story in wasmCloud should be compatible with your existing tools, kind of slot right into a cloud native stack. If you just like throw wasmCloud into a cluster that's using other standard tools, and it should also be something that you can get for free out of the box with your individual applications. You shouldn't have to explicitly import a tracing library, do all of these things to instrument your functions. It should just be kind of done automatically at the WebAssembly boundary with wasmCloud. And so that's what we tackled. Oh man, it's got to be at least over a year ago now with tracing. But there are, I think this is commonly referred to as the three pillars of observability. Some people argue that there is a fourth. I'm going to try to get away from pontificating on it, but we now have implemented tracing logs and metrics and exporting them to OTel, which is open telemetry compatible collectors. If you are not familiar with the project, OpenTelemetry is kind of a standard. It's a collection of APIs, SDKs, and tools, is what they say on the website. But it very specifically is very commonly used in across the technology ecosystem, and it's actually the second most contributed to project in the CNCF, right behind Kubernetes, if you've ever heard of that one. So very, very popular project, very well maintained. If you're looking at using it in your code, there are a bunch of different SDKs for individual languages. But again, on the wasmCloud side, we're kind of doing this for you automatically. So I did mention traces a little while ago. Now, Connor, I will need to find, it might take me a second to find the PR, so I won't waste the time, but Connor added support for exporting logs to a log collector over OpenTelemetry. And Jonas put in a PR just 2 weeks ago, which is actually now double approved. We're just waiting on 0.82 to go out first before we merge this in. But with this and a brand new example in the wasmCloud examples directory here, I'll go there manually so you can see how to get there. If you go to examples and then under Docker, we now have a Docker Compose OTel manifest. And this includes Grafana for dashboards and kind of displaying OTel information. We have a collector, Loki for collecting logs, Prometheus for collecting metrics, and Tempo for collecting traces. So we have kind of the full observability stack laid out in a Docker Compose. You can launch this, and then once the metrics PR actually merges, you can use wasmCloud to export all of these things to the services that are running. So this works great. And I actually just wanted to show you what this looks like. So I have this running. I guess I'll go ahead and show my terminal. I'll come back to look at the dashboards here in a second. But I actually have this Docker Compose running here in the lower terminal. I might run out of space up here, but it's running Loki, Tempo, Grafana, the OTel collector, all those things. I am also running wasmCloud here, which the only thing that you need to do, I'm running off of this branch, but the only thing you need to do is set your traces exporter to OTLP. And then you can just execute wasmCloud. This works right out of the box with washup as well. And we will export all of those things to the collector. And then I also have an application running. Where are you? Where this is the output of our intro tutorial, which is we get the inventory of this host. It is a TinyGo or a Golang WebAssembly component. And it is interfacing with our HTTP server and Redis key value stores. And it's just doing basically a hello world, but with a counter, KV counter plus hello world. So I've been sending requests here. And if we take a look at the code, where is it? If we take a look at the code here in hello.go, you'll see all of the same code that comes in with our quick start, but there is no actual instrumentation here, any implementation of metrics, for example. It's all done on the host. So let's see what this looks like on the dashboard side. So what we've prioritized doing is starting with a minimal set of functionality, and then we plan on expanding the metrics and traces and logs and all of those things from there. So if you go to the Grafana page, which is just it's all the way up there in the top right, it's at localhost 5050, is just the port that's exposed in Docker. You can go to the sidebar and go to explore. Oh, hey, Grafana. If you take a look at the sources over here on the left, there is now Loki, which will be logs, Prometheus for metrics, and Tempo. I think it's worth noting, as I keep saying these specific projects, these are all just really easy to use out of the box configurations for OTel, but there is nothing specific to what we do that requires you to use these vendors. If you have a different collector, different tracing vendor, as long as it's OTel compatible, it'll all work. So what we can do for Loki, for example, is we can query all of the logs that have come in at an info level. And if we take a look at that, you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit here. We can see, a few minutes ago, got my provider started. We started my actor, which came locally from the Golang directory, all those things. So this is really cool. You can now query these logs that have come, normally would just go to standard error or maybe a wasmCloud.log file. These are now being exported as well to a tracing collector, which is cool. We can also go over to Tempo. And if we search, we can look at all of the traces from the wasmCloud hosts. So when I send this curl command in, one of the traces that we get back here, if I can expand it, is starts all the way up at handle RPC message, instantiates the WebAssembly component. I drop a log in the course of executing the component just to say, hey, I'm gonna greet world when it comes back from this. So the log is kind of persisted here. Then we call increment on the bucket, and then we return. And the whole thing took 3 milliseconds to do that thing. So we still have, this is the kind of old news part of it. We still have support for traces between the distributed services, but now this is kind of at the level of a of a component API. And then last but not least, if we take a look at Prometheus, go away. Cool. We take a look at Prometheus, you can actually take a look at the one metric that we have implemented in the first example of this, which is how long a component takes to handle an RPC message in nanoseconds. So I sent a couple invocations before the call started just so that we could have a little historical data. We could take a look at it from like a line perspective as well. But this will be tracking this based on the actor reference, which you can see. I guess I can't expand it there. You could filter based on the actor reference. And if we take a look at here, we can see that the nanoseconds it takes, my brain is failing to figure this out immediately, is like 5 million nanoseconds. Was that like 5 milliseconds? Something like that. That is the maximum amount of time that it took to handle a request, which is probably when I was throwing a bunch at it. So yeah, this is essentially what it looks like to see the three different pillars of observability in wasmCloud. So all of these things are just exporting to this one collector connected to these different services. And in Grafana, there is something essentially building up queries so that you can ship different Grafana dashboards to folks. I'm fairly sure that Jonas is also working on coming up with a couple of those dashboards to display useful information like actor RPC message handling over time, how many concurrent executing instances of an actor there are at any given time over a kind of a time horizon, things like that. But this is essentially the MVP of all of these features. There's only one metric that we're instrumenting right now. But now that the plumbing is in place, it's actually really easy to take that and add more metrics to the implementation. So huge hats off to, I guess, everybody who worked on tracing in the initial implementation. Connor for implementing logging on the OTel side, and Jonas for really driving home the first metric in the plumbing around getting metrics exported in wasmCloud. This was something that was really important for us to ship with 1.0 so that you can drop wasmCloud into an existing system and then you can observe it. You can answer questions based on the metrics. You can take a look at logs, all those things. I see one or two questions in the chat. Oh, okay. Jordas, you had a question in Grafana templates, and I think I kind of addressed that with talking about dashboards. Like we, in addition to the Docker Compose, what we want to do, maybe just have an OTel folder in our examples directory that give a couple of templates and queries you can use to pull nice, useful information out of it.
Yeah, Grafana have a marketplace, so I think it will be a good place for discoverability. If you take a look and trying to publish it there, that will be my suggestion there.
Okay, Grafana Marketplace. Good to know. Folks have other questions on OTel? Alrighty, well then we can go ahead and move on to the next part. Just a note that OTel tracing and logging will be coming out in 0.82, but metrics we're actually going to hold back for a moment. We want to, even though the MVP is nice and being able to see that, we want to make sure that we put in, a minimum viable usable set of metrics to really answer operational questions when it comes to running and wasmCloud. And we've talked about that a little bit before in other parts where we've mentioned OTel. So next part on the community call, I really want to call attention to the next version of wasmCloud, which we have cut a release candidate for yesterday, 0.82 RC1. Going to be going through a couple of tests today to make sure everything is working as expected. But as a part of this, you are going to see a couple of changes to our documentation. Nothing major. And we're going to be leaning really hard into writing wasmCloud applications with WebAssembly components. So if you come over to our quick start, we talked a little bit last week around having a Rust section and then a Rust component section, for example. We've actually gone ahead and dropped the Rust section in favor of moving completely to WebAssembly components. So the same that we've had before, Rust, Go, TypeScript, and Python. And there's going to be a significant set of improvements that come with the 0.82 version of this which is going to be more first-class support for generating actor component projects from or for a specific language. So instead of generating from essentially from our repository, we're leaning in harder and providing templates for Rust, TinyGo, TypeScript, and Python. Just a more first-class experience for components as we drop 0.82. And then in addition to that, we're also going to be landing one of the awesome features that Victor worked on, which is, I don't know if I actually have the WADM in here. I do, which is relative paths in a WADM manifest. I know that this has been a little bit of a sore part of our onboarding experience for wasmCloud, coming in here, replacing it with the path that it's in. But we now don't require people to modify this WADM manifest until they want to add extra capabilities. So smoothing out that experience a little bit, making the intro tutorial as close to what we want folks to be doing in a normal developer iteration loop. And it's also worth mentioning now that our WIT worlds to start and from here on out are going to be pinned to the WASI Preview 2 interfaces as much as possible. So HTTP is now at 020. WASI logging and the WASI key value things are outside of WASI Preview 2, so those are different. But it's just really worth calling attention to the fact that 0.82 is the version of wasmCloud that will drop with WASI Preview 2 support. And that's really exciting because we get to carry that forward. Any questions?
Brooks, you've got a lot, you're running point on this, and you've got a lot of contributors right now. Where do you need help? How can we rally around? Are there some good first issues that are out there? Are there some things we should be testing, or where do you want us to be? Where do you want our eyes?
Yeah, that's a great question, Liam. I know that a lot of the changes that are going through wasmCloud 1.0 come around changing the RPC mechanism that's underneath the wasmCloud host. That's something that I'm really excited to put into place because I think that's something that will be kind of opaque to the user in the ideal world. You're just running a component, same as before. So honestly, what I would love feedback on and thoughts are as you go through kind of the adding capabilities part of the introduction, whether you're trying out a new language and trying to use it with wasmCloud or trying it for the first time, I'd really love to hear about sticking points, especially as you go beyond this tutorial. Something that's really front of mind for me is that like hot reload declarative developer experience where you have a WADM manifest that describes your application, and then you want to be able to change code and have that kind of automatically reload as soon as you save or recompile or do both of the things. And so I would love to get feedback from folks on what their normal developer iteration loop looks like with a project like this, and what they want to see. Because just because the wasmCloud runtime itself, the binary we're going to be releasing a 1.0 here in the near future, we can still make a lot of improvements at the CLI level, like where you're actually interacting with the project. So I want to make sure to get those in because we can work on those kind of in parallel to the runtime work.
Okay, thank you, Brooks. That's super helpful.
Thanks, Liam. I know at least that I've got those ideas that I mentioned. If they aren't captured in tickets already, I'll try to get those filed. And if we can break them down into some good first issues, that should give a really good place for folks to come and come and contribute. That'll be helpful.
I mean, what I think I heard was, run through these, run through the new language onboardings and just write down what hurts and, capture the experience and just try to summarize that and maybe start some threads up on wasmCloud, slack.wasmcloud.com and just get some discussions going. I know we've got a lot of real awesome improvements here lately, and it's really cool to see the fruition of what we've been all wanting to happen with WebAssembly actually happening now. It's Legos for code. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're trying really hard to make the intro experience essentially the same. Okay, the same when it comes to wasmCloud, but more language idiomatic as much as we can. So, for example, the TypeScript quick start. We'll begin with creating a wasmCloud project, and the way that you build it will be running wash build, just like every other project. But in the process of making this or doing a wash build, you also have the option of doing like an npm install or npm run build, like using language specific tools for the project. So that's something that's really important to us. And is honestly, I can't give these folks a shout out enough. Very, very due to the work that's being done in the Bytecode Alliance for componentized JS and componentized Pi. Those tool chains are what makes these other languages the support possible. Generating bindings for those languages, having language specific tooling, things like that. So yeah, bringing it back around, Liam, exactly what you said is what I want. Folks going through the tutorial, anything that hurts or anything that's confusing, let us know. Hey, Yordis.
Is there any unit testing strategy that you recommend or documentation or something about it? Or should a developer extract away, the wasm part of it and trying to be smart about how they bundle together things?
Yeah, the whole unit testing story with modules, like with WasmBus modules was something that kind of had to abstract away some of the code and then only conditionally compile the not WebAssembly the part. But as like Victor is saying, what we really want to do for unit testing support is have it so that it's just within language. Like for Rust, you could write a cargo test and then you execute that cargo test. Now, when it comes to kind of like integration tests or like application tests with wasmCloud, what we've been looking at doing is almost like an application harness around like testing multiple different components interacting with each other. The goal of that would be if you have a component like the one that I was working with and it receives HTTP requests and hits a Redis key value store, as a part of that integration test, you set up a listener, you set up a Redis database, and then you use a testing library like request to send an HTTP request, and you validate the response. So when it comes to like testing an application, that is something that we've looked at adding for specific languages, but we haven't quite had the time to work on that yet. But there are so many testing tools, and they're all different depending on what language you're using. The unit test I would highly recommend doing like with a language framework. Did that answer your question, Yordis? Nice. All right, folks. Well, that was the kind of went through a couple of things. This was around the wasmCloud 0.82 release. That should be cutting either a little bit later today if I can get the testing done, or early tomorrow. And we'll try to put out like a small announcement at least around WASI Preview 2 support, because that is a good one to fit in with the rest of the WASM ecosystem right now. For now, though, I think we can get into our regularly scheduled roadmap update. We'll just do kind of a brief look over the 1.0 page. Not exactly sure where we are in terms of where we were last week exactly, but I do know that we've gotten a bunch of different tasks move over to the in progress section. I'm actually fairly sure. I know this one is ready for work. Victor, have you started on removing the capability claim signing? I know that was something that we talked about, but I don't know if you actually officially started on it yet.
Oh, so I haven't started working on that yet, no.
Okay. Just wanted to check because I knew that we discussed it, and then I know we're working on other things with the RPC framework. But really what I want to call attention to, if I reorder these a little bit, these top two here around host metrics and formalizing, formalizing the wasmCloud control interface, both of those are actually done and just sitting in a PR waiting on releasing 0.82 so that we can make sure to get that version out before we put in any other breaking changes. And then I think this last ticket down here is really just waiting on an ADR just to kind of close it out. I mean, we've been defining our interfaces using WIT for quite a while now. Our capability providers are all now working based on the WIT definitions. And going forward, we're going to be using WIT for all of our components, actor or provider, on how they communicate. So that's really awesome. Moving on from there, pinning WIT definitions is just really waiting until the release milestone. It's not a hard task for us to do. It's just adding versions. And then after 0.82 is released, we can start work on this other task. So minus a couple of blocked things that we need to add a little more information on, we're making really steady progress to the 1.0 milestone. So it's really awesome. Do folks have any other questions or things that they feel aren't adequately captured on this roadmap?
I got another one, Brooks.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a lot of breaking changes coming in the path to 1.0 here, the next month or so. What are your thoughts on, release candidates, and give us what's it going to look like for you here? You're quarterbacking this up here for the team, and what's on your mind?
I lost my Zoom thing for some reason. Yeah, thank you. My mic is a
Thought you might
clapper.
be on a clapper.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking when it comes to releasing wasmCloud 0.82, this is our last planned minor release of wasmCloud before 1.0, because it has all of the important things other than the WRPC framework. When we look at major kind of features, not just breaking changes. So a lot of the breaking changes that are going into 1.0 are ones that we definitely want to make, but we don't want to be breaking everything before then, because it's just like a migration path. There's no need. So with releasing 0.82, what we plan to do is keep supporting that version of wasmCloud with patches and security updates and all of that. So even if we start merging breaking changes, we can continue to kind of cherry pick fixes if necessary. But over the next month or so, as we keep merging and breaking changes, we may be cutting, after significant feature improvements or feature adds, we may be cutting alpha versions of 1.0. We're probably going to be cutting alpha versions until we're at least at feature complete for 1.0 before we start to get to release candidates. But as soon as we get there, we should have a couple of weeks of release candidate testing with 1.0, which is when I would make the call for everybody to give it a shot, see how it works with their components, start to take a look at some of the resources that we are going to add for migrating over from Smithy-based actors, things like that. So that's kind of what to expect on the release side for 0.82 and 1.0. For you all, at this point, I would recommend after 0.82 drops with the WASI Preview 2 interfaces, I would take a look at existing wasmCloud actors that you have that are still Smithy based and try to start migrating those over to components where you can. If you have any questions on that, we can always help with that in the wasmCloud Slack. But now is a good time to do that because the core standard WASI interfaces aren't actually going to be breaking between 82 and 1.0. And so, everything else is going to be on the wasmCloud side, so we can provide a nice path there. It's a little bit off the cuff for what I'm expecting, but do folks have questions about that process? Cool. Well, that is all that I had for our regularly scheduled agenda. Do folks have anything that they wanted to bring up from the general WebAssembly ecosystem, wasmCloud questions? Just go ahead and open the floor, raise your hand, and we'll chat about it.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Alt Liam. Liam turned off his video, so I don't know if he's actually there, but just a heads up that we're going to have conference stuff coming up here for WebAssembly content. So there's wasm.io coming up in the middle of March, right before KubeCon EU. And then there's WASM Day at KubeCon EU, as well as various WASM related talks. We're going to be getting together a list as part of the WASM working group in the CNCF. So I'll bring that list back of all the WASM related topics for people to go check out if they're going to be watching remotely or there in person. And so we're going to be we're going to be there. If you're going to be there, let us know and you want to chat. We'll be over there. A few of us will be. So just come and say hi. And then I think that's it on the conferences coming up. There'll be more after that, but those are the two big ones coming up.
Yeah, Victor.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to see if there's anyone yeah, you can hear me. I want to see if there's anyone using WASI threads. So I know that came up earlier today between me and Brooks, but WASI threads has actually been a tier 2 target on Rust for a bit now, and I'm curious to see if anyone's kicked the tires or used it yet, or if anyone knows of anyone that's trying essentially multi-threaded WebAssembly out.
I know of people who created the original WASI Threads proposal and have shifted gears to doing this at a much lower level, separate part of the specification, and are not pursuing WASI Threads as a target anymore. Now there's a piece at effectively the core WASM specification part that allows us to have what we call shared everything threads. And it would allow us to have even a spawn thread instruction which was hard to do even within inside WASI threads. And the cool thing about that is that it allows me to now compose components together because it's managed at the core WASM spec space. So I can compose components that each one of them perhaps individually is doing some type of thread management. Now that work is ongoing. I know that there are POCs by awesome folks like Andrew Brown inside LLVM for it. But that's not something that it has made it to the surface of like a Rust target or anything yet. And would need more work at the component model ABI space is where I think I last heard about making sure we potentially have shared annotations on some of the canon operations and types. So I don't think that's done. And I would be surprised if people were actively using the WASI threads stuff. I know there was a POC inside wasmTime, but obviously not enabled for us and not enabled anywhere by default because that proposal's super paused. So WASI threads is the thing that was an early experiment that hasn't changed in about a year because the people who were pushing on it are pushing in a different direction now, and the work is inside core WASM.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting because this repo is it's seen some changes recently. Who's the do you remember offhand who's the champion or who's pushing it?
OG champion was Andrew Brown from Intel, but more recent champion, because there were people who had shipped with this, even though it wasn't past a phase 1, was on, well, can't say that. I believe the more recent changes would be coming from Marsan, who's one of the people that participates in the WASI subgroup. But you know, within the WASI SG, we're having a lot of conversations about this right now on a path forward for people who are on WASI threads and how to get them to using the core WASM spec. And I'll drop a link to where the new activity should is somewhat here. I'm realizing that there's not a lot.
Well, Bailey, what I hear from that is just kind of it kind of sounds like a win-win, like proposals going into the core WebAssembly spec instead of being WASI specific. I, that seems to introduce more rigor, make it less specific to WASI, so a little more portable when it comes to like the WebAssembly itself. Um, am I right in thinking like
Yeah,
this?
it was a really big deal. But we have Thomas Lively that is also one of the new champions of the core WASM spec side. There's also multiple dedicated resources that are working on this full time, like uh-oh. I'm blanking on names, but folks that work within the core CG, the core WASM community group. And getting buy-in from somebody, you know, from a group that works on a browser vendor like Thomas, it's a big deal because that means that we're going to have portability, which is really the goal, which we weren't. It looked like we were in a dead-end road with WASI threads.
Very cool. Folks have other things that they wanted to bring up at the free time? All right, folks. Well, then I think we can go ahead and cut it early. This is your official wasmCloud endorsement to tell your work that you can take the rest of the day off, go enjoy your Valentine's Day. Thank you so much for coming to the community call as usual. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. See you next week.